Good morning. So, I'm going to be putting on a 12-week course with my dear sister, friend, Sarah Shepard called Liberated Love, which is going to be a Gene Keys Venus Sequence 12-week course with somatics. So integrating the gene keys and bringing in somatics. And I wanted to come on and talk about how do we use the gene keys in parenting. And this is one of the beautiful things about the Venus sequence in the gene keys is it's all about relationship. It's all about opening our hearts. And it's actually a map. And this was really cool for me because I was already diving deep into this in the somatic world, and then discovered that the gene keys actually gives this soul map, this astrological map of what I was studying in somatics and what I had journeyed with my son, my 2-year-old son. And so I was so excited to bring these two together. And the map in the Venus sequence actually shows us the map of what our little one, our child, or maybe you're a mother to be, what is it that they are encountering in the ancestral field as soon as they're conceived? So the energy, the sacred wound that they take on as they're conceived. And then it actually maps out, I'm getting chills as I talk about that. And then it actually maps out the first trimester, the second trimester, and the third trimester of our little one. And then that translates into those same 3 sequences, translates into the first 7 years of their life, and then the second 7 years of their life, and the third 7 years of their life. So it literally is a map of the spiral of the soul journey that your child is going on. And it literally shows you the themes. So both the shadow themes, the trauma themes, and also the gifting and what they're meant to embody and grow in and become through their astrological imprinting. And so what's really cool is if you get to know the Venus sequence, not only do you start to understand the sacred work that your child has taken on, what their soul has signed up with, but you also start to get to know what you're going to be having a relationship with. And so what I really noticed with my son is that, the ancestral wounding that he took on to alchemize and work with, and then also his SQ, which is the spiritual quotient, which is his first trimester and then now the first 7 years of his life. I deeply feel myself journeying with those energies. So, as he is journeying that and it's being imprinted into him, I'm also journeying that as a mama. And what I have found is that understanding that and knowing that, I was already feeling those frequencies. I already had a sense of those frequencies, but having mental understanding that this is what I'm dancing with is helping me more consciously engage with it. And so I'll give you an example. My little guy, his soul purpose, I'm going to talk about his soul purpose first, is he's working with the energy of desire, is the shadow. And that comes up a lot. He has a very strong will. He's very clear what he wants. And if that desire doesn't get met, there's a really intense energy. And what's been really helpful for me is to understand that this is what he's learning about and dancing with, and a unique vibration that his soul has come to learn about. Now, what I think is really cool is in the gene keys, there's a shadow frequency, a gift frequency, and a acidic frequency. So the shadow is, when we're going deep into the wounding and the heavier, denser energies. The gift is the gift that comes from that. Like as we learn through the shadow, what is it that comes from that? That is our gifting to the world and to ourselves. And then lastly, the acidic is when we come into the more enlightened, awakened frequency. And so how I like to think of this and what I've noticed and how I've taken this in through developmental psychology and all of these different places is that if we as mamas, if we can support when they're young like this, if we can support a conscious awareness of what they're learning and what's in the field, and if we can learn how to meet that shadow in them, if we can learn how to recognize it, love it, and also start to attune to the gift frequency of what our child is bringing, but also what they're learning about, it actually helps do the work with them. It's almost like at this beginning stage, we're actually in the patterning of this with them. Now, we can't learn the lessons for them. We can't take it on. They're here to learn about that. But we can become allies in making the field clearer so that they can feel the difference more between the shadow frequency and the gift frequency and the acidic. And so in this way, when we have this map, we can actually start to, how I think of this is it's almost like unwinding a bit of the karma that our child is going to have to be with. And it also is helping us attune more to the frequency of the gifting that our child brings. I was blown away by this because I didn't look at the gene keys in that way when I was pregnant. And then when I started to get to know it, maybe when he was just in his first year, and I started to look back at the map, I was blown away at how much it showed the journey of the pregnancy already, like the spiraling of his journey. And like literally his SQ is struggle, perseverance, and honor. And during that time there was a forest fire and we had to evacuate from our house, and there was this sort of like big perseverance energy. And then as soon as I was in my second trimester, I really thought that I would be a mama that would be like sinking in and down and going really watery. But instead what happened was my business blew up and I was like so inspired and I was doing so much. And that was both for the second and third trimester. And then sure enough, in his Gene Keys map, it shows that the gifting of that time for him, both of them, is aspiration. And so, and ascension. And so I really saw how not only am I creating this sort of container of energy for my child, but they also are bringing this package of shadows and gifts that I'm getting to dance with and learn from. And actually, if I can learn how to receive their gift, the gift frequency, and attune to it and notice it and welcome it in myself, that's also going to help them welcome and receive that in themselves. Because the thing is when our little ones are little, we are their outer body. We literally are laying their nervous system. So if we think of what their soul is here to learn, if our bodies can meet them and feel that journey that they're on, we can mirror a healthier template for them. We can help their nervous system inlay the patterns that are needed in order to receive their own gifts and also move through their own shadows. And of course, then as they grow and they become their own person, they have to find their own way with that. But we're laying the foundational imprinting, the foundational neural circuitry for them to be able to basically, with secure attachment, right, with more security and more stability, meet the shadows and the gifts that they're meant to journey with. And I have just noticed this dance inside myself where I'll have a moment, I'll be like, oh, there's his, okay, he's dancing with that shadow right now. There it is. It just went out for a second. So I just waited. Okay, I can feel that. I can feel that in my body. I notice that. Okay, how can I be with this? How can I breathe? And in that way, I'm actually modeling in the field and in the nervous system, in his nervous system, how to do that with that shadow. And then the next layer is me noticing how can I bring in the gift frequency of that. So for example, if we're working with his desire shadow, the gift of it is lightness, and he has so much of that already, like that's just innate in him. But also when he's really going into that shadow place, I can bring a lightness. And I'm attuning to the gift frequency in the field, and I'm helping wire his nervous system to be able to move between the shadow frequencies and the gift frequencies easier, so that then when he grows, when he's doing this dance himself, then he will have that neural circuitry to make it way easier to move between these places. A teacher that I really love, she said, really in parenting, our ideal is we need to support them to build a sense of self and an ego, right? But the most ideal thing is that ego is really light and is able to be adaptive and move so that our soul and the soul journey, the soul essence, can shine through more. And so in this way, I've been finding the Gene Keys an extremely helpful map. And if you're a mama and, you know, even let's say maybe there's struggles coming up in parenting, you can literally look back at the Gene Keys map and say, okay, well, what are the themes that my child's been working with at these different times? And how does that also match with my chart? So in the Gene Keys, it also gives us a soul wounding map of ourselves. And what I have found really powerful is to really contemplate, okay, so if this in my chart and this in his chart meets, what does that look like? What is the beauty that's going to come of that? What is the challenge? For me and my son, we actually have quite a few similar keys in our genius. So literally his outer expression is my inner and my inner is his outer. And that's really cool to have awareness of, to be curious about, to bring consciousness to. The other thing is, and Sarah Shepard and I are actually going to dive into this in our masterclass that's happening on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. And I'm going to post some more info here. But really, I'm just wanting to kind of just help you feel how the Gene Keys can be a good tool. But the attractor field is basically what we draw in, what we attract in, what we're meant to attract in to learn from. And so there's a chemistry that happens in relationship between one person's attractor and the other person's attractor. And there's a list of different types of chemistry that shape the way that the relationship looks. And it can be very potent and powerful to learn about what your attractor chemistry is and what that is with your child, because it'll really help you understand what is just going to be the flavor of your dynamic with your child. And so what can you sort of accept? And then also what's going to help that chemistry be at its most harmonious or its most health. One kiddo, for those of you that have more than one kiddo, it'll be really helpful to map out because, you know, classic thing. It's like, well, with this child, it's easier for me to attune, or I get them more. And then this child, it feels confusing. A lot of times that will be due to the attractor and also the way that the keys work together. And basically it gives you insight, like in a bigger picture, it gives you insight into what is the journey? What am I here to learn? And one of my favorite contemplations being a mom is, you know, in the alignment, why this child, why this conglomeration of characteristics, and how I've understand this in my own field is that we attracted each other, right? So what I'm learning, where I'm at in my journey, the ingredients that are here called him in, and vice versa. And so some of that is because there's a harmony, and some of that is because we have a lot to learn about the different ingredients that each of us brings. So I find the Gene Keys can be a really beautiful way to zoom out and see that bigger soul journey. It also is a beautiful map for what is the deeper healing I need to do. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling overwhelmed in your relationship with your child, you're feeling overwhelmed with parenting, the Gene Keys can give you a zoomed out lens of where can I bring my attention? Where could I do some work? And it'll help you map out themes that you can start contemplating, themes that you could start taking to therapy, themes that you can start working on in your practice, so that you actually have some focus and some clarity. The other thing is that me and my partner have found is that the Gene Keys has been a really beautiful way for us to communicate about things. So to communicate about frequencies or energies that we're noticing are alive in the field, it gives us words. It gives us words to communicate about it and talk about it. Now, my little guy's only 2, so I don't know yet what it would look like when he starts to have awareness and can talk about it. That'll be exciting to be able to have a dialogue and be curious if he's curious about it or how he notices it. But the last thing I want to name about this, it's also really powerful, is in the Gene Keys, in the Venus sequence in particular, it also maps out our spiritual journey, but then also our emotional and our mental. And so I work with families, right? I work with mamas, I work with papas, I work with families. That's my favorite, is working with families and working with everyone in the relational sphere. And what the Gene Keys will show is we can get to know the themes of like, oh, this is your child's emotional theme. So this is what's going to come up in their shadow version in their emotions. This is what's going to come up in this is the gifting of what's going to come from that. And I often am looking at people's gene keys charts with them when we're working together, because it really helps us understand where's the trauma, where's the misalignment, where's what we're needing to unwind and work with, and what is just the way that there's going to be this dynamic, like that this is just how it's going to be, and then it's how to orient around that. And it can really help. I had this too for myself, just orienting to, oh, this is the way that my child's emotional energy works. And then I can stop trying to fix that and more get curious, how can I just be a really good container for that? Yeah. And, my little guy isn't at his IQ yet, mentally, but that's still in the field, right? Because it was in his 3rd trimester. And so for me as a somatic therapist, what I've also loved about the gene keys is when we go into the body and we're working with sensations, it can be overwhelming. It can feel like we're in a sea of patterns. And the gene keys really helps us have clarity about where we can focus, what we can look at, how we can feel things in our bodies. And so if you haven't looked up your child's gene keys chart, even if you don't know a lot about the gene keys, I have a sister that just did that. She didn't know much at all. And she literally just looked up the profile and just started looking at just the words on hers and her daughters and her sons. And already so many insights, so much, oh my gosh. And she could really see the different flavors and ways that the energies work together. So I encourage you to do it. And then of course, if you want to know more, if you want to dive in more, you can get a Gene Keys reading. My dear friend, Sarah Shepard, she's an amazing Gene Keys guide, and she can do a reading for you. And then the other way would be to actually tune into Sarah and I's well, first of all, we have a masterclass on Saturday at 9 a.m. where we're going to dive more deeply into the attractor field, which is so juicy because this is like, again, our chemistry and what we attract. And then also we have our 12-week course starting May 3rd, and we're going to be journeying the Venus sequence, what I just described. I'm going to be journeying the Venus sequence, but also doing somatic work, so to help it really land in the nervous system so that it feels really practical as well. So both like the mystical and the really embodied. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm glad to offer this as a tool. I love to jam on it, and I just feel myself I love bringing the gene keys into the nervous system work that I do. And so you'll also hear those themes kind of popping up in the different ways that I talk about parenting. So much love.